I just want to say this before we get started. This story is for you if you have ever been duped, deceived, taken advantage of, or made to feel inferior by someone you truly trusted. And please hear this clearly, if you are going through a time when you feel like your life is falling apart. Broken does not imply completion. The most difficult ends can occasionally lead to your strongest self. Now inhale deeply, because there was more to what transpired in this courtroom than just drama. The walls were being breached by the truth. It was painful to walk while wearing a powerful outfit. In the end, one woman lost more than just her spouse. She discovered who she was. Tension was already high in the courtroom. You are aware of the weighty, quiet, that's the kind that stops breathing, isn't it? That was the room's atmosphere. Ready to dissolve a marriage that had been the gossip of the town, she entered. With a serene expression and a red folder in hand, raise your head. Each step conveyed the same message. I came here to complete this. Inside, no cameras were permitted. However, the rumors continued. The stares continued unabated. The silent condemnation in the corridor continued. Before the thud of heels hitting the floor, everything appeared to be going according to plan. Click, clack, click, clack. The woman who entered the courtroom was not meant to be there, so everyone turned to look. The list did not include her. She did not receive an invitation. She wasn't anticipated. Nevertheless, she showed up. She also had an envelope in her hand. Nor merely paper, nor merely evidence. A tempest, the wife pivoted. The spouse froze. The space shifted. The woman then uttered 5 icy phrases while grinning. The divorce is not the end. The actual story then started. Not with healing, not with compassion, but with violence. The room became so motionless that it seemed surreal. The entire structure seemed to be aware that something unsightly was going to be hauled out into the open. As evidenced by the subdued lights above, the wife was seated on one side, composed and well-groomed, next to an astute attorney who had discovered concealed funds weeks before. She appeared stable, almost too stable. There was nothing but stillness, no trembling hands, no anxious tapping, no cracked face. The spouse, who appeared to have not slept in days, sat on the opposite side. His face was filled with that worn-out horror that people have when they realize the truth is getting closer and closer, and they have nowhere else to run to. His attorney sat rigidly next to him in a pricey suit, attempting to project confidence, but panic was seeping into every part of him. Because this was more than a divorce, this had turned into a conflict over trust, money, and an entire appearance-based empire. The woman who had ruined the moment then came forward. She appeared too composed. She held that big, sealed, secret packet, and she exuded confidence like armor. Startled, the judge raised his head. The clerk of the court blinked. There was no more whispering in the room. "Ma'am, you are not listed in this proceeding," the judge stated after clearing his throat. The room leaned in as she said, "With respect, Your Honor, would I have affixed this case directly?" With a gentle lift of one finger, she dropped the first bomb when the judge inquired about her identity. She uttered her name. She went on to claim that she was the child's mother, and she had records demonstrating that this divorce was based on lies. One sentence seemed to cause the entire room to change. Someone let out a gasp. A pen was dropped. The husband leaned forward so quickly that it appeared as though his body went ahead of his mind. "What are you doing?" he asked, nearly choking on his words, and she responded without blinking. "Something I ought to have done long ago." That line did not simply fall. It made a cut. She was instructed to come to the bench by the judge. She put the envelope in front of him after taking a hesitant step forward, her heels hitting the ground like little warning bells. With caution, he opened it. His expression remained neutral at first. He then began to turn the pages. He turned one page, then another, and then all of a sudden, his eyebrows furrowed. "Would you like to explain these transactions?" he asked, looking up at the spouse, and that's when the room really started to open up. Payment records were in that packet. Thousands of dollars go through a business shell every month, disguised by fictitious labels and justifications. The woman had a clear voice. She said that the spouse had been using a fictitious business to pay another woman. According to her, the funds were passed off as consulting fees. It had been going on for years, she claimed. Then she said the part that made the air chill. A child was present. He had concealed a child. Not from the general public, not from unfamiliar people, from his spouse. The sound in that room would have been a quiet scream. The wife didn't blow up. It became even more powerful as a result. She didn't toss anything. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply inhaled deeply. And for some reason, that seemed much riskier, because sometimes being silent does not equate to weakness. Quietness can sometimes indicate that the fire has become sharper and is no longer burning. Leaning forward, her attorney requested a brief break. The room erupted into turmoil as soon as the judge approved it. Before the first flame appeared, reporters were waiting outside the courtroom as if they had smelt smoke. As soon as the woman left, she was inundated with questions and microphones. "Are you making him public? Do you want to exact revenge? Did you just make a secret child public?" She paused and responded with a composed expression and a firm tone. "I'm not looking for attention. For the truth, I'm here." She ought to be aware of her spouse. Like lightning, that sentence shot down the corridor. The wife, who had presumably been holding for much too long, finally exhaled in a secluded room. However, that wasn't someone's broken breath. It was ultimately confirmed by someone's breath. She had a suspicion. She had sensed something. And now, with documents in hand, the truth had finally emerged. She glanced at her attorney and quickly decided what to do next. Keep the business apart. Release the shared brand agreements. Take his name off of it. Preserve her reputation. Defend her business. Defend her future. At that point, the narrative ceased to be solely about heartbreak. It was all about strategy. It was now a matter of survival. The story now revolved around a woman who realized she had been supporting a roof that someone else kept burning on fire for too long. Things worsened back in the courtroom. When the judge returned, the wife's lawyer stood erect and asked for an urgent modification to the terms of the divorce. She requested a complete audit of financial transactions, a freeze on joint property, and a close examination of everything that had been touched in the previous several years. The husband's attorney objected right away, claiming that the new evidence was unexpected, but the judge was no longer in the mood for well-crafted justifications. He reminded everyone in the room that this was already the second account that had not been disclosed, and that there was now a hidden child connected to hidden funds. Everything was altered by that. The objection was dismissed. The impact of that single sentence was profound. The wife crossed one leg over the other, sat back in her chair, and gave her husband a look that spoke louder than words could. In the meantime, he appeared to be an aging guy. The next twist followed. The woman was permitted to testify by the judge. With the serenity that only those with long-kept secrets possess, she took the stand and sat there. "Because I saw what he did to her, and I realized I was next," she responded after pausing briefly and glancing across the room in response to the question of why she was speaking now. That statement transformed her. Until then, she might have been perceived by some as a disruptive, messy outsider and troublemaker. However, she also changed with a single sentence, a warning, a mirror, and a woman who at last realized she had been used and not chosen. She continued by saying that he had knew the child was his since the day of the baby's birth, and that he had pleaded with her to keep quiet, because his wife would take everything if she found out. She then said something else that hit even more. She is deserving of everything. The room was not seeing a divorce at this moment. It was witnessing an entire made-up world fall apart. The internet had already blown up outside that building. Videos were leaked. Voice notes dispersed. Hashtags became the norm. People took sides. Memes took off. Comment sections become battlegrounds. However, the stakes in the court battle were higher than public humiliation, because the financial documents posed a threat in addition to being embarrassing. This went beyond simple treachery. If funds had been transferred through fictitious companies, if those payments had been concealed, or if taxes had been incorrectly submitted, this might have been fraud. Furthermore, fraud doesn't give a damn about your public smile, your image, or your justifications. Records are important to it. The wife's attorney opened a different folder and sent in additional paperwork. In a panic, the husband's side pleaded for more time. The husband was ordered not to relocate, conceal, or transfer any assets after the judge dismissed the gavel and postponed the hearing until the next one. That was meant to be the end of it. It wasn't because another woman came over while the wife went outside. It was a quiet one. No speech, no grand arrival, no intense gaze. It was a quiet one. No speech, no grand arrival, no intense gaze. She just moved ahead with another envelope in her hand. She told the spouse that she brought it personally because she didn't know where else to send it. She then put it in front of him. When he opened it, his entire expression transformed. There was a DNA test inside, as he told the woman next to him tales of work commitments and business travels. He concealed another child, another lie, and another existence. After glancing at the paper, the wife turned to face him. Her heart was practically turning to steel. Betrayal eventually grows too great to experience all at once. It no longer feels like a single wound. It begins to feel like a whole map of deceit. Additionally, once you view the entire map, you never go through it in the same manner again. Another woman soon made an internet post. Then there was another rumor. Then there was another receipt. Here's a payment. There was a message, a tape, a move, a trail of hush money, a business paper containing dubious signatures, a property linked to names that had no place in the narrative. The walls continued to close in, and despite the husband's best efforts to maintain his reputation through well-chosen words and public apologies, the truth continued to surface more quickly than he could tidy it up. He was not flawless, according to one apologies post. However, imperfections were no longer a concern. This has nothing to do with one poor decision or ignoring an anniversary. This was a routine, a machine, a habit, a way of living based on a woman's allegiance while surreptitiously squandering her confidence like spare cash. One of the most agonizing revelations of all followed. There was a recording. In it, the spouse had an honest, icy voice that is typically reserved for intimate discussions and dimly lit spaces. He discussed power, money, backup plans, and maintaining the marriage for the sake of appearances. In an instant, the betrayal surpassed the cheating. It was manipulation now. It was now treating someone like a tool in private while branding them as a partner. The wife really started to alter at that point. No sobbing, no lengthy online speeches, and no outbursts. She entered the mode of strategy. She made changes to the divorce decree. She requested ownership of the company, the brand, the retail assets, joint ventures, and payment for the years that her reputation, commitment, and hard work contributed to the creation of something he profited from. She was essentially saying, if you used my name, my strength, my peace, and my patience to build your kingdom, then I want back what belongs to me. To be honest, that wasn't retaliation. Accounting was that. Then one of the story's most surprising turns occurred. This time, the woman who had previously caused mayhem in the courtroom returned to stand beside the wife. She gave an honest response when asked why, since she was also exhausted. I'm sick of being misled. Are you sick of being taken advantage of? I was sick of keeping quiet for a man who had given several women different versions of the same bogus promise. She acknowledged that she had once trusted him, that he had told her he was going, that the truth would destroy the brand, and that he had pleaded with her to conceal her suffering in order to protect his reputation. She then made a dramatic musical statement. The man who committed the damage did not own the brand. The woman who survived it owned it. This was no longer a fight between women, and that line altered the emotional core of it all. This was women identifying the same lie from several angles. Pain is not eliminated by that. It reveals the true cause of harm but does not repair it. In the meantime, the audit became more ugly. There had been reports of falsified signatures. Allegedly, money had been transferred without permission. Questions were raised by business paperwork. Stories that the husband never intended for daylight were revealed by properties. In the end, even his rage was unable to save him. He lost his cool in court, stormed out, and attempted to attack others around him. However, it was already too late. No outcry can stop truth when it gains sufficient weight. The woman did not lose her composure. That serenity turned into her superpower. She rebuilt publicly, spoke clearly, posted thoughtfully, moved strategically, and gradually stopped looking like a woman, ending a failed marriage, and began looking like a woman, starting a new life. She redesigned her brand, took back control of her company, made new goals, transformed abandoned spaces into new chances, and stood in front of microphones as a woman proclaiming her independence rather than as a victim pleading for understanding. At one point, she essentially stated that this was more than just a divorce. It was a proclamation, and it could have been the story's most accurate line, because some endings are spiritual, others are emotional, and some are legal. It was all three in this instance. The final court date finally arrived. Inside, there are no cameras, crowds outside. A city is waiting, a reputation in jeopardy. She showed up wearing white, not a gentle white, not white for a wedding, white victory. He appeared as though regret had borrowed a suit and neglected to iron it. The judge then said something. The court decided in her favor after considering the financial records, the testimony, and the evidence. The union was dissolved. She was given important commercial holdings. Legal fees and support were mandated. Further, financial misconduct was still being investigated. However, the ruling was hardly the most potent moment. She was asked whether she wanted to speak on the record, and that's when it happened. She got to her feet, turned to face the man she had once trusted, and spoke with the type of strength that comes from suffering turned into wisdom. She claimed to have created with him, trusted him, and forgiven him more than most people ever ought to. However, she refused to continue silently sacrificing. She then said the words that brought the entire narrative together. This isn't retaliation. Restoration is what this is. That was all. Don't yell. Avoid making a dramatic retort. No more words are required. Because those who no longer need to demonstrate how upset they are frequently the strongest individuals in the room. They just remain true to themselves. Not only did she leave the courtroom free, but she did so lawfully. Free in her identity, free in her thoughts, free in her business, and free from the burden of a man who continued to demand payment for his secrets. She soon started new initiatives, fresh messaging, and new vigor. She built on the pain that could have killed her. Resilience is sacred, not because suffering is desirable. And the man who once believed he was in charge faded into stillness as the very lies he believed he could control ultimately overtook him. The scandal is not what makes this narrative compelling. The cheating is not the problem. It's not the drama at court. It's not the noise from the internet. The metamorphosis is what gives this story its potency. A woman entered to dissolve a marriage, but she left with her voice, her future, her business, and her dignity. Perhaps that's what a lot of folks need to hear today. The truth can occasionally be discovered later. It can be painful at times. Sometimes it comes in a way that makes you feel ashamed before releasing you. However, let it do its job when it arrives. Allow it to shatter the illusion. Allow it to show what was concealed. Let it make room for something sincere to flourish. because there is no peace at all when it is based on falsehoods. Ultimately, this was more than a single courtroom or relationship. It was about what happens when there is no more silence. It was about what happens when the individual who has been bearing the burden finally lets go. After years of deciding between survival, loyalty, and patience, the story revolved around a woman selecting herself, and everything changed as a result of that decision. The union was dissolved. The picture broke. The secret came to light. The money trail was important. The reality emerged. Above all, though she recalled who she was, and the entire narrative shifts when a lady recalls that, if this story touched you, please hit like and follow me for more inspiring tales about honesty, resiliency, and overcoming betrayal. I would also like to hear from you in the comments. Was the woman messy as she entered the courtroom, or was she the message that the truth had been waiting for? And one more query. Do you believe that healing starts when the lies are revealed, or when you ultimately make your own decisions? Stories like this aren't only about drama, so subscribe, enable notifications, and return for the next part. They have to do with power. They have to do with surviving, and occasionally, they are about at last becoming the person that suffering attempted to destroy, but was unsuccessful. Becoming the person that suffering attempted to destroy, but was unsuccessful.